Welcome to Tacoma Urban League's State of Black Tacoma 2023. I am Tawana Nobles, the President and CEO of the Tacoma Urban League, and I'm excited for the conversation we get to have today. First up, we get to hear from Dr. Tafona Ervin. Here in Tacoma and in Pierce County, we have ambitious and attainable goals to ensure that all of our students are ready for career, work, and life. We are going to make sure that all of our students are prepared to be successful. And that's why at Tacoma Urban League, we have family engagement and mentorship programs to ensure that we are tackling policy, investment, and practices. But we can't do it without our partners like Dr. Ervin and her team. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Tafona Ervin as we discuss the state of Black Tacoma as it relates to our youth and education.
It is my honor to present to you all today the state of Black education for Tacoma, a path toward economic mobility. I want to share with you all as a committed leader, neighbor, and friend that our purpose is to help every young Black child find and experience joy. Joy so that they understand true liberation and freedom for themselves and for their own future. Take, for example, this young Black man who entered the East Side Community Center, experiencing technology, science, and art, coming to a place where he had never known these opportunities existed to him. He began to find his own level of joy. Joy in art, joy in science, joy in learning, and he was able to do that with friends and peers in his community. This is our call to action as we think about educating the future of our community. In order to get there, though, we must understand and thus break down the barriers that prevents our youngest Black residents from experiencing true joy. And situated today in the data, I will help to talk a little bit about that. I start with the first indicator of K readiness, or the Washington Inventory for Developing Skills. This instrument is an assessment that determines an entering kindergartner's readiness to learn. What you see here today is 49% of our Black students are assessed as ready to learn when they enter kindergarten. Now, this may not seem like a great number. However, it is important to know in the context of all Tacoma students, just 52% of our students are assessed as ready. And for our students to be only 3 percentage points lower, this is pretty incredible, especially when we know that in 2019, only 26% of our students were assessed as ready. And in 2020, that number jumped to 43. What you hear are some gains that are happening in the state of our youngest entering children who are learning to be ready for school now that they've entered kindergarten. Take, for example, programs like that with the Tacoma Urban League, the Parent, Doula, and Childhood program that allows for parents and children to have safe spaces to learn from one another, to connect, to ask questions, and to nourish opportunities for growth and opportunities to expand and not situated in generational trauma. Creating spaces like this for our Black families, our Black children, allows for them to create more developing opportunities when they're young, as opposed to be situated in generational trauma. Now, while this is only one opportunity or program that can help to assist in K readiness, it's a worthwhile call out because the more we can create programs and opportunities for safe spaces for our families and our children, the better they will do. And while we are starting to see gains in K readiness, it is also a huge indicator about the success of their abilities to thrive throughout their high school career and beyond, which leads me to high school graduation. Tacoma, we continue to show up year after year with high graduation rates for our Black students. And I must note we need to continue to celebrate this accomplishment. The accomplishment of a young person gaining their first credential into the next steps of their life. A credential that allows for them to prepare for the workforce or enter into a post-secondary opportunity, opportunities to explore pathways that perhaps they've never known before. This indicator of high school graduation is one we'll continue to raise high, one we'll continue to celebrate and thank the countless educators, administrators, and community partners who invest in our children from cradle to career. High school graduation has stabilized, and we are proud to acknowledge these numbers for our Black residents. However, these numbers alone mean nothing if they are not doing something with it once they graduate. Opportunities that we need to focus on today are in the completion of post-secondary credentials. Now, our data tells us that 39% of Black students that graduate from high school within 1 year of high school graduation are completing a degree or credential. Our data includes certificate programs, 2-year degrees, and 4-year degrees. And while we are very thrilled to keep the momentum, which have averaged around 38% or so over the years, it tells us that we have a great deal of work to do to support the persistence and completion of young Black students in their post-secondary career. Now, you'll hear all about housing, challenges and opportunities, workforce development, healthcare, and other civic engagement challenges and opportunities for Black residents. I must note that all of those contribute to a young person's ability to persist and complete in college. They are the next generation of change that we need right here in Tacoma. I want to give a call out to all of the program providers that have been doing incredible work to wrap their arms around our young people, cradle to career, to support young Black children feeling like they belong. Programs like Seeds of Peace, the Mayor's Youth Commission, Narrative Changers, Push for Dreams, all of these programs are coming together, trying to give opportunities for Black children to see themselves in a place where they feel welcomed and valued, to contribute to their own success, and to push back against systems that are not allowing them to thrive. If we want our Black children to experience joy, education is one part of that. And the more that we develop them in the early years, we sustain them throughout their high school career, and we encourage them through their post-secondary, the better our community will be, and the more we'll all thrive. As we think about the opportunities that we ourselves can leverage, our influence, our resources, our power, our policies, it is up to us to help them to create a future that we never thought possible, and allow for their voices to be heard, and when heard, to be acted on. As community, we have a great deal of work to support and nourish our young Black and brown children to thrive. I want to thank you for joining us in this state of education. I want to share with you that if you'd like to learn more about all data across the cradle to career continuum, you could visit us at graduatetacoma.org/data. Thank you.
The Urban League movement's 2025 empowerment goal is that every single person have a living wage and good benefits. That is why at Tacoma Urban League, we work tremendously hard to connect potential employees with potential future employers. It's also why I'm so excited for Katie Condit to talk to us about jobs and workforce development right here in the 253. Please help me to welcome Katie.
I'm grateful for the opportunity to share some updates on the state of Black Tacoma and workforce development. I'm Katie Condit, CEO for Workforce Central, and our role is to bridge the gaps between job seekers and employers in Pierce County to ensure everyone has access to a quality job leading to self-sufficiency. From a workforce development perspective, Tacoma's Black communities are continuing to lead the way for our entire community when it comes to challenging the status quo of inequitable economic systems. In terms of progress in workforce trends, the most compelling data points to the significant closure of the gap in unemployment rates between Black and white community members. As you can see by this first slide, in 2013, that gap was 6.6%, with significantly higher rates of unemployment for Black workers. Today in 2023, that gap has narrowed to 1.6%. And while that narrowing is a product of multiple economic trends, it's also a reflective measure of progress. There remains, however, an urgent need to address our collective work around the systemic barriers that keep overrepresentation of Black community members in lower wage occupations with fewer opportunities for growth in Pierce County. While median earnings overall have increased since 2010, you can see by the slide that the gap in earnings between Black and white community members has remained rigidly consistent, with Black workers earning 75% of the wages of white workers in Pierce County over the last decade. In many cases, these wage disparities are the result of continued occupation segregation across sectors. The fact is that higher wage occupations in the region have a significant underrepresentation of Black workers filling those jobs. On the screen, you can see the total Black population in the light blue line at the bottom, and the lower proportions of this population represented in some of our higher wage sectors listed above. That pattern tracks across the majority of high-wage sectors in the county. Although these disparities are highly concerning, there are really promising trends in employer strategies over the last year that aim to address these workforce disparities. Skills-based hiring is one approach to thinking differently about what makes someone qualified for a job. It asks employers to truly consider what is needed to be successful from a skills perspective. So, for example, organization skills, computing skills, welding skills, etc., as opposed to a singular focus on school completion, for example. Now, to be clear, we know higher education is critical to many meaningful pathways to quality jobs, but this skills-based hiring approach actually amplifies the value of what is learned in school while opening the doors to lived and other experience as valid. For example, someone who has stayed home from work for a couple years to parent children has really strong organization, leadership, and other skills that are valuable in many high-wage occupations. Skill-based hiring values those skills, regardless of their origin. This approach has promised to shift disparate outcomes in wages and occupations across industries. In addition, employers are adopting new approaches to workplace culture, which is a critical factor to ensuring Black and other workers are supported to advance along good wage pathways. Practices like flexible schedules, skills-based hiring, equitable pay, creating workplace accountability structures, and measuring staff experience of culture of belonging, all of these things add up to ensure workers who have faced persistent barriers are supported and retained. These shifts in employer practices, coupled with brilliant local efforts to eliminate financial and other barriers to higher education and training for Black Tacomans, will go a long way towards eliminating workforce inequities. Speaking of training, I'd love to quickly highlight a few other key areas for celebration for the state of Black Tacoma in workforce development. Importantly, each of these strategies was designed and/or heavily informed by Black community members. Continued investments in strategies like paid training for workers to upskill and reskill are critical because many underemployed people can't leave their jobs to upskill without earning a wage. Pre-apprenticeship and short-term certificate pathways lower barriers to access, like Palmer Pathways skilled trades training and those offered by our community and technical colleges and other higher ed partners. Redesigning training in these ways helps dismantle many of the inequities we see baked into workforce development. These investments, and especially those in efforts led by and for Black Tacomans, will ensure that the state of Black Tacoma, through the lens of workforce development, stays strong in the years to come. I greatly appreciate the opportunity and am honored to be here and share some insights into current trends in the workforce that impact Black Tacoma community members. We are learning to be better in our work at Workforce Central every single day and are committed to continuing our growth and amplifying and investing in workforce efforts that are led by and for the Black community. Thank you.
Tacoma Urban League has had a long-standing relationship with Tacoma Ceasefire. But when we all experienced a rise in all forms of violence across Pierce County after the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to step up a partnership with the Credible Messengers program. This is in partnership with the city of Tacoma. And here today, we have Candace Wesley to talk to us about the rise in gun violence and how we are tackling violence reduction as a team. Please join me in welcoming Candace Wesley.
Like many of us, I always took from my city. Now my service is to give back. The Black community is impacted by Tacoma Ceasefire through its leadership, support, mentoring, and advocacy. As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic disproportionately affected Black households more than white households. The cumulative aftermath is still job loss, food insufficiency, and financial insecurity, resulting in the increase of violence, mental illness, and homelessness. Violence in our city stems from economic instability, racial and social prejudices, profiling, and injustices. The lack of free will opportunities, and the fact that Black people are repeatedly incarcerated without considering the driving force behind unhealthy choices that are being made. Ceasefire is humbled to give back to Tacoma, leading the community in violence reduction and awareness, violence prevention and intervention, family reunification, community building and mobilization, being a liaison and a consultant between community, elected officials, law enforcement agencies, and faith-based organizations. Tacoma Ceasefire is working to reach the state of Black Tacoma at large by way of enhancing the quality of life for community members by making the narrative of what our needs look like alive, opposed to allowing it to be scripted by others. We do the work because unification and violence reduction is vital. Moreover, if we look at our city's violent crime rate in 2019, Tacoma registered higher than the national violent crime rate average by 122.76%. Being reminded that community violence consists of gun violence, domestic violence, and all forms of assault, plus more. With the understanding that gang violence is not the nucleus of crime in our city, but a contributing nexus. The 2020 Tacoma crime rate rose by 3% compared to 2019. The number of homicides stood at 28, an increase of 11 compared to 2019. Crime stats for Tacoma and Pierce County showed 2022 was the deadliest year on record, with 45 homicides in the city and 79 countywide. I believe that one of our gains concerning violence in the state of Black Tacoma is there has been a 21% decrease in violent crime incidents citywide. Many advocates and specialists have made a conscious decision to become a united force on the front lines to combat violence in our city. Another gain is the fact that we have the Tacoma Urban League providing a strong support foundation for grassroots entities such as Tacoma Ceasefire. A gap that we have seen throughout time has been the application process for funding and the outsourcing of it, the qualifications for funding, and the requirements that need to be met for the application process. Another gap in the Black community consists of spending time thinking about what isn't right versus positioning ourselves to make a change. A new component of Tacoma Ceasefire is the Community Trauma Response Team. This is in partnership with the City of Tacoma, Tacoma Police Department, and the Tacoma Fire Department, and it is overseen by JCW and Associates. Another component is the Violence Prevention and Reduction Awareness Project overseen by the Tacoma Urban League. Tacoma Ceasefire strategizes ways to meet the needs of the entire community by hosting events that cause family engagement. For example, the 4th annual Juneteenth 253 celebration being held June 17th at Wright Park in Tacoma. Juneteenth is now recognized as a federal holiday, sponsored by the Tacoma Urban League, Metro Parks, JCW and Associates, just to name a few. This event brings hundreds, if not thousands, community members together in celebration of the freedom of Black people. Community field trips are also essential. In April, we were afforded the opportunity to attend a Seattle Superhawks basketball game in collaboration with the owners of the team, who are also Tacoma natives, other organizations, and advocates. We chartered buses, transportation vans, and escorted 489 children and their families to Seattle to enjoy a night of fun. Because of organizations like the Tacoma Urban League, we have been supported in our efforts to do year-round family fun-filled activities which aid in the reduction of violence. We have mobilized the community for peace walks and created spaces for families to express their concerns and platforms that highlight our creativity and royalty. The Black community is on the mend and empowered to thrive in our destiny. To get more involved, I encourage you to connect with an organization that you feel comfortable with and bring your gifts and your ideas.
Safe, decent, and affordable housing is not a luxury. It's a fundamental human right. This is why at Tacoma Urban League, we've added a new housing counselor, and we continue to offer our first-time homebuyers course. We're so grateful for our partnership with Habitat for Humanity as we ensure that we're doing our part to increase Black homeownership. But we also want to make sure that we are advocating for more multifamily units and options for renters. Here with us today is Felicia Medlen from the City of Tacoma to talk to us about housing in the state of Black Tacoma.
Homeownership is the top wealth building action that a household could make. Yet when it comes to the homeownership rate for Black households in the state of Washington, right now that sits around 35%. While for white households, it's 68%. And so right off the bat, there's a disparity between Black and white households in terms of their ability to attain and achieve the #1 action to build wealth in this country. And so there are a number of systemic reasons for this and barriers that Black households face in their journey to attaining homeownership. In some cases, it just leads them to not even consider it as an option for them altogether. And 3 of those things that we're going to talk about, some of the actions that are being taken to overcome those barriers, have to do with mortgage qualification standards. So standards that are set so high due to the obstacles a Black household may face, they would just not be able to achieve those. And then also 2 jurisdiction or government related things that were done has to do with redlining and also the use of restrictive covenants based on race. And those were 2 particularly harmful tools that were used to decide or dictate where a Black household could or could not live within a jurisdiction. And so the map that you're seeing right now is an example of that here in Tacoma. And so it's very real, and the impacts of these actions are still being felt today. However, I am happy to say today that earlier this month in 2023, the state took some action to move us forward from our history of redlining and the use of restrictive covenants. And the action that the Washington State Legislature took just a few weeks ago was called the Covenant Homeownership Account Bill. And this bill is really aimed at undoing the harm that was caused in the state of Washington through the use of restrictive covenants. So the initial step in this bill is going to be to conduct a study, and this study is really going to give a quantitative measure to the depth of the problem, and it's going to help identify the specific populations that were harmed the most through the use of restrictive covenants. And the results of this study are then going to help them implement programs and design products that can help undo that harm. One of those products is going to be a down payment assistance and closing cost assistance program, and that's going to be targeted at the 100% AMI level. And another criteria for eligibility is going to be you have to be a resident or have been a resident in 1968, or you have to be a descendant of a resident from 1968 that was impacted by the use of restrictive covenants in the area where they were seeking to buy a home, or even if they were just renting but restrictive covenants were in place, then those would also be qualifiers. And then, so that's one thing. The other two are going to be the enactment of a $100 document recording fee, and this will be applied to all real estate transactions across the state and will be used to help fund programs that are developed as a result of this bill. And so that's attaching a revenue source, which is a really big thing. So that creates an actionable activity because there's funding to support it, but then also actually developing the programs that can be used to undo the harm from the use of restrictive covenants across the state. The second or the third thing, which is a really big deal, is the creation of a special purpose credit program. And this is a really big deal because it would be the first one in the nation that was developed and implemented by a government agency. This is a very big deal because right now only private and nonprofit organizations are in this space. And so for a government institution to step into this space and be willing to be that direct and explicit about who they're wanting to serve through this type of program opens the doors and kind of lays a pathway and a foundation for other jurisdictions to do this, which is one of the most impactful and intentional ways a government agency can direct resources. And so it's really big, and we should applaud the state for taking this first step and really keep the pressure on them to continue to back up what they're saying and what they're doing with these types of actions, and just keep them committed to this work. Looking a little closer home to here in Tacoma, we have 5 different things that are going on. 2 of them are building on existing things that we've been just trying to be consistent in implementing and making resources available to folks. And there are 3 things that are a little bit newer that I want to tell you a little bit more about. So the 2 that are currently happening, have been around for a couple years now, is our single family rehab program. So really looking at keeping people in their homes and moving towards a more intentional focus to areas of that have a high displacement risk across the city. And we happen to know that those areas also correlate with areas of high minority concentrations, in particular areas where a lot of Black residents live. And so we want to focus on putting some priority behind keeping them in their homes, particularly when it comes to displacement that might be caused because they're not able to keep up the maintenance on their home. And then the second one is for those who may be at risk of foreclosure. And so we don't want people to lose their home because of foreclosure either. Knowing it's such a hard asset to gain, we want to make sure we're not losing momentum as we're trying to build and get more folks into homes as well. And so we'll be focusing some energy on finding a sustained resource to fund our foreclosure prevention program. It's helped a lot of people the past couple of years. It kind of emerged as a result of the pandemic, but we're hoping to keep it around for years to come because it has been so impactful in keeping people in their homes. So the 3 things that we're working on building up and revamping a little bit are in the area still of home ownership and down payment assistance, but really having some focus on pre and post-purchase education around setting the expectation and having some awareness of what the home buying process looks like. Maybe letting folks know what kinds of questions to ask of their realtor or their mortgage broker, where to go for resources, like what different organizations are out there to provide different types of information, and also just letting them know what to expect during the process itself, the importance of an inspection and all those types of things. And then we're going to be looking at the post-purchase. So once they're in the home, what things do they have to look forward to then? Making sure they know their payment of taxes, the schedule for that, home maintenance, that you don't just move in and then everything's okay forever, but looking at 5 to 10 years down the road and making sure they're prepared when their roof needs to be replaced or when that door down the hall starts squeaking. Just some of the little things that if you don't take care of them can become bigger things. Also, down payment assistance will continue to be a focus. We know sometimes getting enough money for that initial down payment can be a huge obstacle for folks. And so looking at how we can assist in that area as well. For the down payment assistance program that we'll be rolling out later this year in the fall, we're bringing that in-house. It will be administered by city staff in partnership with those in the community who are already embedded in this space. We are not looking to recreate something. We're really wanting to enhance the work that's already being done in the community, which we know there is an abundance of. And so our program is going to be focused on serving Black households. Right now, we have a goal set at 65% of the beneficiaries of that program being Black households, and we even hope to exceed that goal during the first couple years and on a continual basis. One of the last things I want to talk with you about is the Black Home Initiative, which you all may be hearing about here and there in the community as this network builds momentum in the city and northern Pierce County area. So the Black Home Initiative is an initiative that's geographic based, the southern end of Seattle and the south end of King County, and then we have Tacoma in the northern Pierce County area, which is primarily the Tacoma area. And so it's a network of industry professionals from the public sector and the private sector that are really rallying around and being very intentional about increasing Black homeownership in this area. The geographic area was very selective in terms of why those areas in particular. Historically, they are the areas that most Black people lived. And so there have been a lot of displacement from those areas and movement of Black households within that area. And so we're really wanting to focus on, one, keeping community together. And so there's some displacement or anti-displacement measures kind of built into that as well, but also increasing the opportunity for Black households to own a home in that area. So the network is working in 3 core areas. On the supply side, so the industry professionals and folks that are a part of the network that are building homes, creating new units, and have a commitment to marketing those units to Black households. So we're not just increasing homeownership opportunities overall, but making sure that benefit of homeownership is targeted specifically to Black households. Because we know when we help our most marginalized populations, particularly in this area of homeownership, then we actually increase the benefits for all populations. And so being very intentional and focused on that is very important. So the initiative is also focusing on the demand side. So where are the home buyers, the potential home buyers, and how do we get them ready for home ownership? And so there are a lot of professionals, realtors, nonprofit organizations who do education around home ownership, and also the private sector is really stepping in here in terms of the offerings that they have for education around home ownership, and making sure that that is all targeted and intentional for building a pipeline of Black households who are ready to step into those units as they're being created, or on the open market with the help of a great realtor that may be out there just waiting to be connected with them. And so being really intentional about building that pipeline and making sure we have ways in place for a home buyer who is interested to get the tools that they need to start moving forward on that dream. And then the last thing, which is probably the most daunting of them all, is looking at the enabling environment. Looking at the systems that surround the action of trying to own a home. So the banking, the mortgage, working with a realtor. But really, I think there's a focus here on the government systems that are in place, as well as the private industry, i.e. the mortgage systems that are in place, and making sure that the environment there is such that there are minimal barriers, and where there are barriers that we have solutions and mitigation factors that we can put into play to reduce them so that they don't become an overwhelming obstacle for a household, so that they have to kind of just turn away or give up on owning a home. The short of, I think, what I want to convey today is that there are a lot of things taking place across the state, but even here in Tacoma, that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And so my goal today is to really just share that information with you and be a resource. If you want to know more, you can reach out to me. If you want to share or be a part of this work, you can reach out to me and I can help get you plugged in. If you're a realtor, whether you're a realtor or a mortgage broker or work for a financial institution or a nonprofit, if you have an idea, we want to hear it. We think there's a lot of momentum around home ownership and an emphasis on Black home ownership because people are seeing the value. I think we've always seen the value, but now it's something that other folks are seeing, and we want to capitalize on this. And I want to say today that you can be a part of that. I want to thank you for your time today, and I invite you to reach out to me if you would like to know more about any of the things you heard about today. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Our small businesses are the heart and soul of our community here in Tacoma and Pierce County. That's why it's so important to support Black-owned businesses as they take their passion and turn it into profits and help to create jobs and wealth all across the city. Here with us is Jenefeness, and she is going to speak to us about the state of Black businesses and all the incredible work that has gone into helping our businesses to thrive after the pandemic and to grow to increase their profits. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Jenefeness.
The entrepreneurial ecosystem in Tacoma is robust. What makes it robust is the community. This community has strong roots and has gone beyond resilience to create sustainable outcomes. This community comes together in times of need and then stays connected. There's evidence of true unity here. Another factor contributing to the success of this entrepreneurial ecosystem is the organizational support. There are so many partners in this work working and pushing the needle for Black businesses. I can't name them all, but a few that comes to mind off the top of my head is UW Tacoma, the William Factory, Startup 253, the Washington Maritime Blue, the Black Collective, the City of Tacoma, and MBDA, Traction Space, who else? And of course, Black-owned business excellence. We are BOBI. And then there's the policymakers. There has been so much attention and money allocated for small businesses and Black businesses lately that is unbelievable. There is an unprecedented historical shift in designated funds for businesses, for business growth and development that I have never seen before. There are incubators and accelerators at every turn. Experts and service providers are being paid to provide services to our Black businesses, and the expertise and knowledge is super helpful. Also, I'm seeing more Black entrepreneurs in traditionally white spaces. There was a time I would walk into a space and I would only see one or two of us. And now those numbers are growing and it's beautiful. It's like blackety black, 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 baby, okay? So while we have come a long ways, there is lots of room for improvement. Equity needs to be the center of the organizational outcomes, all of them. We need more Black businesses to be awarded contracts and capital for expansions and scalability. I mean, big contracts that can change the trajectory of their focus and allow them to hire more Black folks, right? We need the government to be held accountable for misappropriations and not awarding contracts in an equitable fashion. We need continuity and succession plans that center generational wealth. We need an access map that makes it easy for business owners to identify the available resources that are out here. We need to remove the antiquated and excessive barriers that keep us from assessing those contracts. We need to give the community advocates more power and more money to continue the work in the community. We need to stop creating multiple versions of the same program and just pull the resources to strengthen what's already there. So together, we can create a more equitable entrepreneurial ecosystem in Tacoma and in the state of Washington. And we're doing that because we are Black-owned business excellence.
Every resident in Tacoma and Pierce County deserves to have access to quality and affordable health care. This is why at Tacoma Urban League we offer programs like Leaders in Women's Health to advocate for the elimination of health disparities and access to that health care. We're really honored today to have Dr. Jamilia Sherls-Jones to talk to us about what it's been like since the pandemic and how COVID-19 continues to impact the Black community here in Tacoma and Pierce County.
For this year's State of Black Tacoma event, I am happy to provide our community with COVID-19 updates. So we'll start with the bad news. COVID-19 is obviously still with us and will likely be with us into the unforeseeable future. The good news is that we have now learned how to better control this terrible disease, as evidenced by the data chart on this slide. The data shows us the 7-day rate for new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 people in Pierce County. You can see here that overall, disease activity is fairly low right now, with a case rate of 25.8 from May 2nd through May 8th. We had that big spike of cases in January 2022 due to the Omicron BA2 subvariant, but cases fell off by the end of March 2022. COVID-19 vaccines remain the best strategy to protect against the COVID-19 virus. There are two charts on this slide. The top one shows vaccine data by race ethnicity at the state level, while the bottom one shows Pierce County data. The light purple shows those who initiated primary series. The slightly darker purple is those who completed the primary series. The darkest purple is those who received any booster, and the blue is those who received a bivalent booster. Approximately 56.1% of Black residents in Pierce County have completed their primary vaccine series, compared to 57% of white residents, which does not indicate a disparity. However, when we look at COVID booster rates, only 48.6% of Black residents in Pierce received at least one booster vaccine, compared to 60.4% of white residents. This does indicate a concerning disparity. COVID booster shots are important because they improve your protection against serious illness or death from the COVID-19 virus. Before I leave this slide, which includes American Indian and Alaska Native data, I want to acknowledge that the Washington State Department of Health is committed to honoring tribal and indigenous data sovereignty in all of our data products. We understand current data collection and analytic practices are not always inclusive or the best representation for people of different racial and ethnic backgrounds, including American Indians and Alaska Natives. We are committed to working on improving data collection, management, and reporting with tribes and community partners in the future. We continue to engage partners and work as an agency to improve both our data systems to capture more accurate data and our data analysis practices to be more representative and inclusive of all groups. I'll now provide a quick summary of the new CDC COVID-19 vaccine guidelines and recommendations. The CDC recently recommended the use of bivalent Moderna and Pfizer vaccines to simplify COVID-19 vaccine recommendations and allow older adults and immunocompromised individuals to get an additional dose of bivalent vaccine. The bivalent vaccine includes a component of the original COVID-19 virus strain and a component of the Omicron variant to provide better protection against COVID-19. mRNA monovalent COVID vaccines are no longer authorized. The CDC updated recommendations now allow for an additional bivalent vaccine dose for adults 65 years and older, and now allow for an additional bivalent vaccine dose for certain people who are immunocompromised. Everyone 6 years of age and older should receive one bivalent mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. Individuals 6 years and older who have already received a bivalent mRNA vaccine do not need to take any action unless they are 65 years or older or immunocompromised. For children under 6, multiple doses continue to be recommended and will vary by age, vaccine, and which vaccines were previously received. The Novavax COVID-19 vaccine, which is not an mRNA vaccine, is also available for folks who cannot or will not receive a Moderna or Pfizer mRNA vaccine. And finally, the Janssen J&J COVID-19 vaccine is no longer available for use in the United States. May 11th marked the end of the federal public health emergency. Many of you may wonder what this means. Facilities or organizations that have relied on DOH standing orders to administer COVID vaccines should determine another signature authority to decrease disruption to vaccine services. Washington Notify, the state's COVID-19 exposure notification app, also sunsetted on May 11th. However, the good news is that there will be no impact on COVID-19 vaccines, treatments, and tests currently distributed by the United States government. This means that COVID vaccines are still free for everyone until commercialization occurs, which is expected to occur sometime in the early fall. When commercialization occurs, COVID-19 vaccine and other medical countermeasures will be purchased, distributed, and paid by public and private payers. There is still support for those who have fallen ill from COVID through the nationwide Test to Treat initiative, which allows people to be tested for COVID, see a healthcare provider, and receive a prescription for medication if they are eligible, all in one location. Some locations have telehealth options. DOH, in collaboration with Color Health, also provides telehealth for those who test positive for COVID and would like treatment options. And finally, the DOH Care Connect Washington program is available for those who tested positive for COVID-19 and need support isolating at home, such as food, medication delivery, childcare providers, and much more. The Caravan program is yet another continuing service. We are pleased to announce that it has expanded to offer more than just COVID vaccines. We offer flu and mpox vaccines, as well as CDC recommended vaccinations for children through 18 years of age. To further support our communities, the Caravan staff can perform blood pressure and blood glucose screenings. Anyone can request a Caravan mobile clinic on the website linked on this slide. On April 18th, the Department of Health and Human Services announced the Bridge Access Program for COVID-19 vaccines and treatments to maintain broad access to COVID-19 vaccines for millions of uninsured adults while addressing COVID inequities. The program will create a public-private partnership to help maintain uninsured individuals' access to COVID-19 care at their local pharmacies, through existing public health infrastructure, and at their local health centers. The program has two major components. It provides support for the existing public sector vaccine safety net, and it creates a novel funded partnership with pharmacy chains to enable them to continue offering free COVID vaccinations and treatments to uninsured populations. The Bridge program will begin around the same time COVID vaccines go into the commercial market this fall and will operate until December 2024. Moderna and Pfizer are also expected to offer patient assistance programs for those who need help paying for the vaccine. We now know that COVID-19 is most likely here to stay. It's important to understand how to live our lives while keeping ourselves, loved ones, and community as safe as possible. Prevention is key. If you haven't done so already, get vaccinated and boosted. Again, COVID booster shots are important because they improve your protection against serious illness or death from the COVID-19 virus. You can get vaccinated at your healthcare provider's office, pharmacy, or at a community vaccine clinic. Another way to prevent COVID is to consider wearing a mask on public transportation and in indoor settings when COVID activity is medium or high in the community. You should also wear a mask if you have COVID symptoms, a positive test, or if you were exposed to someone with COVID-19. Some people may want to wear a mask just to feel safer, and that's okay too. Knowing when to test for COVID can also prevent spread of the disease. You should test for COVID if you are feeling sick, after attending a large gathering, or before, and if you are exposed to someone with COVID-19. If you do get COVID, please stay home and follow isolation guidelines that can be found on the DOH COVID-19 webpage. There are different treatment options for COVID that you can explore with a healthcare provider. And don't forget, if you need extra support during isolation, please consider the Care Connect Washington program. The pandemic years have been hard on everyone. I want to thank all of you for helping us get to the end of the COVID-19 public health emergency, as well as remember those we lost to this terrible disease. I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Well, Tacoma, we have work to do. Not only do we need to always take the time to lift up Black brilliance, joy, genius, and innovation, we must continue to do the work to close the gaps and to eliminate the disparities that exist in the Black community. And there's so much work to do around the conversations we didn't have today, conversations around increased economic development and reparations for the Black community. But I'm grateful that we got to cover topics such as housing, healthcare, education, employment, and justice. I invite you all to join us in achieving our mission and ensuring that we are supporting the Black community and underserved community here in the Tacoma-Pierce County area, but also empowering communities and changing lives each and every day. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you to all of our sponsors, to all of our board members and our staff members and our partners, to Maddie Photography and Motion, and also Host Event Planning. We're just so grateful that we could put on this production and conversation for each of you. But now it's time to take action and get to work. I'll see you all on the streets.